Today we reaffirm this important bond, and we take the next steps to make our relationship closer, stronger, and more powerful than ever before. It is more powerful than ever before. And by the way, it will remain that way. We don't go in and out like other people. It will remain that way.
President Donald Trump receives a warm welcome from Saudi Arabia, the complete opposite of what happened with former President Joe Biden. The United States gets a big win as the Crown Prince himself pledges an insane amount in order to help our economy, and Democrats are left arguing with themselves as statements from the past administration are now haunting them. So first, guys, let's talk about the president arriving in Saudi Arabia, and I want you to see the difference. I want to show you the difference between President Trump and Joe Biden, because it seemed to be crystal clear to the leadership of Saudi Arabia that Joe Biden really wasn't the leader of the country when he was. Watch this clip where you can see the president being welcomed by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He was also greeted by Saudi business leaders. I should also note that a half hour before landing, Air Force One was escorted by multiple Saudi F-15 fighter jets. On the ground, President Trump's motorcade was escorted by riders on Arabian horses. Now, in contrast, former President Joe Biden's visit was very different. First off, he wasn't greeted by the Crown Prince. Instead, they sent the governor, an obvious message that the relationship between both countries at the time was a little strained. And I'm pretty sure you also remember that Joe Biden was offered a fist bump instead of a handshake. With President Trump, the Crown Prince deliberately shook his hand with a smile on his face. Now, the difference could not be any more stark, which kind of goes to show just how much respect President Trump commands. And then, of course, there's the message from him regarding global security. I believe this is something the entire world needs to hear, because after 4 years with Joe Biden and different conflicts around the world, President Trump's sending a very different message, a message of peace.
As I said in my inaugural address, my greatest hope is to be a peacemaker and to be a unifier. I don't like war. We have the greatest military, by the way, in the history of the world. You know, I rebuilt our military in my first 4 years and rebuilt it into the most powerful military there is. And you saw that when I knocked out ISIS in 3 weeks. People said it would take 4 years, 5 years. I did it. We did it in 3 weeks. Just days ago, my administration successfully brokered a historic ceasefire to stop the escalating violence between India and Pakistan. And I used trade to a large extent to do it. I said, fellas, come on, let's make a deal. Let's do some trading. Let's not trade nuclear missiles. Let's trade the things that you make so beautifully. And they both have very powerful leaders, very strong leaders, good leaders, smart leaders. And it all stopped. Hopefully it'll remain that way, but it all stopped. I was very proud of Marco Rubio and all of the people that worked so hard. Marco, stand up. What a great job you did on that. Thank you, J.D. Vance, Marco. The whole group worked with you, but it was a great job. And I think they're actually getting along. Maybe we can even get them together a little bit, Marco, where they go out and have a nice dinner together. Wouldn't that be nice? But we've come a long way, and it's could be, you know, millions of people could have died from that conflict that started off small and was getting bigger and bigger and bigger by the day.
You've worked your whole life. You deserve a Medicare plan that works for you, not one that drains your wallet. This is exactly why Chapter exists. They're not tied to a few plans. They review every option to save you money, to keep your doctors, and to maximize your benefits. The average senior is saving about $1,100 a year with Chapter. Chapter was founded by people who refused to let their own parents get ripped off. And so now they're helping families everywhere. There's no cost, there's no pressure, it's totally free, just real help. So give our friends over at Chapter a call and see how much they can save you on your Medicare expenses. Give them a call right now at 909-563-8279, or you can reach them at askchapter.org/Ron and see how much money you can save. Besides peace, President Trump also talked about economic partnership with Saudi Arabia pledging to invest in the United States. The president claimed that this alone would bring millions of jobs to our country.
As you know, we have the biggest business leaders in the world here today. they're going to walk away with a lot of checks for a lot of things that you're going to provide. And in the United States, it's probably 2 million jobs that we're talking about this visit. So, number one, I like visiting with you, and we've known each other very well, and I really believe we like each other a lot. And number two, for the United States, we've brought tremendous investment in and tremendous jobs, and we'll continue to service your great country very well.
And the good news doesn't even end there, because the Crown Prince just confirmed a huge investment into the United States.
As far as Trump deals have gone since he got back to office in January, today's actually seemed like it was pretty easy. He came in on Air Force One. He talked about how he thought that $600 billion was pretty good, but that he wanted $1 trillion. And then about 4 hours later, that is exactly what the Crown Prince pledged.
In the coming months, we will work on second phase to finalize the remaining agreement to raise them to $1 trillion.
That was easy, and it wasn't just about business deals at this business forum. President Trump talked about how he will soon drop sanctions on Syria on the sidelines of a meeting with Syria's interim president tomorrow to give that country a chance to thrive. He also said that he's going to help Saudi Arabia defend itself from Iran and its proxies, and that he's going to do his very best to make a deal with Tehran to prevent them from ever getting a nuclear weapon.
As I've shown repeatedly, I am willing to end past conflicts and forge new partnerships for a better and more stable world, even if our differences may be very profound, which obviously they are in the case of Iran. I have never believed in having permanent enemies. I am different than a lot of people think. I don't like permanent enemies, but sometimes you need enemies to do the job, and you have to do it right.
Initially, the amount was set at $300 billion. Then it went up to $600 billion. And just like that, Saudi Arabia is now set to invest $1 trillion into the United States. Now, again, just for contrast, during Biden's meeting with the Crown Prince, he was asking for Saudi Arabia to increase oil production. The goal for him back then was to lower energy prices, with both petrol and diesel prices reaching record highs. A goal that he ultimately failed in, as he didn't get a deal done during his time there. But of course, we have to look at both sides of the spectrum here. So what is the left saying about President Trump's deals? Well, if you ask MSNBC's Ana Cabrera, the president isn't doing enough.
The U.S. has a complicated history with this region, relying on it for oil for so many decades, often turning a blind eye to human rights violations as a result. But how unusual is it to hear a U.S. president visit the region and not really lean into the diplomatic, the security, the peace rhetoric, instead talking about the economy, the business dealings, sort of a checkbook first approach, if you will?
Well, it's often in our real dealings with Saudi Arabia been at base an economic relationship. We relied on the Saudis for oil supplies. Saudi Arabia's been our crucial partner in maintaining, to the extent possible, stable oil prices. Saudi Arabia is interesting, and it's a very traditional monarchy. It loves the pomp, the ceremonies with the Arabian horses, but it's also a country that is leaping into the 21st century as fast as its people will go. One of the things that Trump will talk about with Saudi business leaders and with the American business leaders he's brought with him is Saudi Arabia's ambition to be an AI powerhouse in the Middle East. They have a state-run company that would like to buy some of the fanciest chips that we make to help their AI ambitions along. And the final point, to underline what Hagar just said, Saudi Arabia is increasingly important strategically. Saudi Arabia is the place where Russia and Ukrainian officials met with U.S. officials to begin to think about a pathway towards peace, where the U.S. and Russia reconstructed the basics of their diplomatic relationship. So Saudi Arabia is front and center, not just in money terms, but also in terms of how the U.S. under this administration thinks about security.
And what she fails to notice is that this is who President Trump is. He creates good relationships with people from all over the world. With that, he creates deals that benefit the entire United States. And I think it's a shame that these so-called journalists can't even celebrate a win for the country. But I'm glad that David Ignatius didn't fall for her bait. But it's up to you to decide if you think that this is a win for our country. Just know that there's only one side that's celebrating what has been achieved here. Which brings me to talk about inflation. It's now at a 4-year low, which is basically pre-Biden inflation numbers, or before he went into office and messed everything up. CNN had no choice but to be surprised by the numbers, even with the narrative that President Trump's tariff strategy will make prices go sky high.
A key inflation report out today offering some encouraging news for American consumers. The new numbers from April showing inflation slowing to an annual rate of 2.3%, the lowest since February 2021. That's defying economists' expectations and President Trump's ongoing trade war.
The new data getting some mixed reaction in the financial markets. The Dow is down, while the S&P 500 and NASDAQ are both seeing small bumps up here.
Now, I want to show you Hakeem Jeffries and what he thinks about these numbers. Now, remember that he was excited about inflation under Joe Biden, even though it hit a 40-year high back in 2022.
Let's work together. Following the leadership of President Joe Biden, whose record continues to move things in an incredibly positive direction for the American people. Wages are up, inflation is down.
The high cost of living in the United States of America, it's a challenge that we need to tackle. They promised that costs would go down on day one, that they would address inflation. Costs haven't gone down, they're going up. Inflation is going up, and a lot of it has to do with Trump's reckless mismanagement of the economy.
Is anybody surprised at this point about Hakeem Jeffries lying to the American people? Now, the problem for them is that President Trump has always been about results. And when the results come in, it's going to be tough for Democrats to keep this up. Here's my question. Do you believe Hakeem Jeffries and his narrative? Now, if you've got time, it would be best to check out a recent video I uploaded recently. I talked about some of the executive orders that have been released by President Trump, most of which are about to change the playing field when it comes to mass deportation. Make sure you guys check that out. As always, thanks for hitting the like button and subscribing. We'll see you next time.